The new wife never stopped pouring dirty water on his wife and children. Until the billionaire showed up unexpectedly. The new wife's cruelty. Hook, 0 to 130. She thought no one would ever find out. For 8 months, she poured dirty water on them like they were animals. The first wife. The children. Day after day. Humiliation after humiliation. The neighbors heard the screams but turned away. The children begged her to stop, but she only laughed. And then, one afternoon, everything changed. A black limousine pulled up to the modest house on Maple Street. The engine purred to a stop. A man stepped out, his Italian shoes touching the cracked pavement, his watch catching the sunlight. He was the last person anyone expected to see, and when he knocked on that door, the truth that had been buried for months was about to explode into the open. This is not a story about revenge. This is a story about what happens when cruelty meets consequence. And I promise you, nothing about this case is what it seems. Questions that will haunt you. 133. Who was this man in the limousine, and why did he come to this broken home? What was the new wife hiding behind her cruelty? Why did she treat them this way, pouring filthy water on a woman and her children as if they were less than human? And what happened to the husband, the man who disappeared without a word, leaving his family to suffer? These are the questions that gripped a small community in Ohio and revealed a truth so painful, so unexpected, that even the people who lived next door couldn't believe it. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The beginning, 3 to 10. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, and for 17 years, she believed in her marriage. She met Daniel when she was 22, fresh out of college, working as a teacher's aide in Columbus. He was charming, ambitious, full of dreams about starting his own construction company. They married quickly, had 3 children, Emma, Jacob, and little Lily. And for years, life felt simple. Not wealthy, but full. Sarah worked part-time, raised the kids, attended church every Sunday, and believed that love and loyalty were enough to hold a family together. Daniel worked long hours, sometimes traveling for weeks at a time. The construction business was tough, he'd say. Clients were hard to find. Money was tight, but Sarah never complained. She stretched every dollar. Cooked meals from scratch. Mended clothes instead of buying new ones. She told herself that hard times were temporary, that Daniel's hard work would pay off eventually. But what she didn't know was that Daniel's absences weren't about work at all. Around 2019, Daniel's business began to collapse. Contracts fell through. Clients stopped paying. He borrowed money from friends, then from loan sharks, trying to keep things afloat. The stress ate at him. He stopped sleeping. He stopped talking to Sarah about what was happening. And then, during one of his trips to Cleveland, he met Nicole Hayes at a hotel bar. Nicole was 28, worked in marketing, and had a way of making Daniel feel like the man he used to be before the debt, before the shame. She listened to his problems. She made him laugh. And slowly, he convinced himself that maybe he deserved a fresh start. By early 2020, Daniel had made a choice. He told Nicole he was separated. He began spending more time in Cleveland, less time at home. And when Nicole suggested he bring her to meet his family situation, he did something unthinkable. He brought her home and introduced her as his new partner, claiming Sarah had agreed to a separation. Sarah had agreed to nothing. But Daniel had already moved Nicole into the house, giving her authority over the finances, the household decisions, everything. He told Sarah it was temporary, that he needed space to figure things out. And then, one day in March of that year, Daniel left for what he said was a business meeting in Detroit and never came back. The nightmare begins. 10:20. Nicole didn't waste time. Within days of Daniel's disappearance, she took over. She moved into the master bedroom. She changed the locks. She told Sarah that Daniel had left instructions, that Sarah and the children were allowed to stay only if they followed her rules. And the rules were cruel. Sarah was not allowed to use the kitchen during certain hours. The children were not allowed to watch television. Their toys were thrown into the garage. And then the water started. It began with laundry. Sarah would hang clothes outside to dry, and Nicole would pour buckets of dirty dishwater over them. When Sarah tried to confront her, Nicole laughed and said the clothes weren't clean enough anyway. Then it escalated. One afternoon, Emma and Jacob were playing in the backyard when Nicole appeared with a bucket. She dumped it over their heads, filthy water mixed with grease and soap scum. The children screamed. Sarah ran outside, but Nicole just smiled and said they were making too much noise. This wasn't discipline. This was dehumanization, and it happened again and again. Sometimes in front of neighbors. Sometimes Nicole would film it on her phone, laughing as Sarah tried to shield her children. The neighbors saw it. Mrs. Chen next door watched from her window, horrified, but she didn't call anyone. Mr. Ramirez across the street heard the children crying and assumed it was a domestic issue he shouldn't get involved in. Everyone saw something, but no one did anything. Sarah felt trapped. She had no money. Daniel's accounts were frozen. She couldn't afford a lawyer. She couldn't even afford to leave. Her parents had passed away years earlier. Her siblings lived out of state and didn't return her calls. So she prayed. She held her children close at night and told them it would get better. But it didn't. One evening in late October, Lily came down with a fever after being drenched in cold, dirty water. Sarah begged Nicole to stop, to show even a shred of mercy. Nicole looked at her and said, "Maybe you should have been a better wife." That night, Sarah made a decision. She went into the closet where Daniel kept his old papers and started searching. She didn't know what she was looking for, but she knew Daniel had secrets. And buried beneath old tax returns and faded receipts, she found a business card. The name on it was Michael Jennings, CEO, Jennings Real Estate Holdings. And handwritten on the back, in Daniel's script, were the words, "In case of emergency, the billionaire arrives, 2035-0. If this part is making sense, drop a comment saying, "I'm still here." Let's see who's truly watching. Sarah didn't call the number right away. She was scared. What if it was a mistake? What if this Michael Jennings person didn't care? But then, one morning in early November, Nicole poured an entire bucket of filthy mop water over Sarah's head in front of the mailman. Sarah stood there, soaked, shaking, and something inside her broke. That night, she called the number. A secretary answered. Sarah explained who she was, that she was Daniel Mitchell's wife, that she found this card and didn't know what else to do. There was a long pause. Then the secretary said, "Hold on." Nicole was inside, scrolling on her phone. The children were in the living room. Sarah was in the kitchen, scrubbing the floor. And then there was a knock. Nicole opened the door, annoyed, expecting a delivery. Instead, she found herself face to face with a man in an expensive suit, flanked by two others in dark glasses. "I'm Michael Jennings," he said, "and I'm here for my brother's family." Nicole's face went pale. She stammered something about not knowing what he was talking about. But Michael walked past her, into the house, and the moment he saw Sarah, kneeling on the floor with a scrub brush, his jaw tightened. He saw the children, thin and frightened. He saw the bruises on Emma's arms. He saw everything. And then he made a phone call. Within an hour, police arrived. Social workers. Lawyers. Nicole tried to explain. Tried to say it was all a misunderstanding. But there were witnesses now. Neighbors who had stayed silent suddenly had plenty to say. Mrs. Chen showed officers videos she had secretly recorded from her window. Mr. Ramirez admitted he had seen Nicole dump water on the children multiple times. The evidence was overwhelming, but the biggest shock was yet to come. Michael Jennings wasn't just a billionaire. He was Daniel's older brother, estranged for 15 years after a family dispute over their father's will. They hadn't spoken since. Michael had built a real estate empire while Daniel struggled in construction. And Michael had no idea his brother had remarried. No idea there was abuse happening. No idea Daniel had even disappeared. Until Sarah's call. But where was Daniel? The truth about Daniel. 35-0, 45-0. Michael's team found him within 72 hours. Daniel Mitchell was alive, but barely. He had collapsed from a stress-induced heart episode in a motel outside Detroit in late March. With no ID on him and no one to call, he'd been admitted to a county hospital under a temporary name. For months, he drifted in and out of consciousness, unable to remember who he was. The hospital staff did their best. But he was just another unidentified patient in an overwhelmed system. By the time his memory started coming back, it was already October. And the first thing he asked for was his phone. But his phone was gone. His wallet was gone. Everything was gone. When Michael finally brought Daniel back to Ohio, Sarah didn't know whether to cry or scream. The man she had loved, the father of her children, had been lying in a hospital bed while Nicole tortured his family. Daniel broke down the moment he saw them. He didn't know. He swore he didn't know. Nicole had told him before he left that she would take care of things. He thought that meant managing the bills. He had no idea she would move in. No idea she would abuse Sarah and the children. No idea that his absence would create a nightmare. But ignorance wasn't innocence. Daniel had brought Nicole into their lives. He had lied to both women. He had abandoned his responsibility. And now, his children flinched when he tried to hug them. The legal process was swift. Nicole Hayes was charged with assault, child endangerment, fraud, and unlawful occupancy. Neighbors testified. Medical records confirmed the children's injuries. Video evidence showed the abuse. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison and ordered to pay restitution. But prison time didn't undo the trauma. Emma started having nightmares. Jacob refused to speak for weeks. Lily clung to Sarah and wouldn't let go. Michael Jennings stepped in where Daniel couldn't. He moved Sarah and the children into a safe home, paid for therapy, covered medical bills, enrolled the kids in a new school. He set up a trust fund for their education. He made sure they would never have to beg for basic dignity again. And Daniel? Daniel entered a rehabilitation program, not for substances, but for the mental and emotional damage he had caused. He attended therapy. He wrote letters to his children, not expecting forgiveness, just hoping they'd understand one day that he never meant for any of this to happen. Michael told him, "You don't get to be their hero anymore. You get to be their father, if they let you. And that starts with showing up every single day and proving you've changed." Reflection and resolution. 45-0, 55-0. 2 years later, Sarah stood in the backyard of her new home, watching her children play. Emma was laughing again. Jacob had started talking about becoming an engineer. Lily was in kindergarten, making friends, drawing pictures of rainbows. They still had hard days. Therapy was ongoing. Trust was still fragile. But they were healing. Daniel visited twice a month, supervised at first, then gradually allowed more time as the children grew comfortable. He would never live with them again. That chapter was closed. But he was present. He showed up. He apologized. Over and over. And slowly, painfully, he began to rebuild what he had broken. Michael remained a constant presence, not as a savior, but as family. He had lost 15 years with his brother over pride and anger, and he wasn't going to lose any more time. As for Nicole, she served her sentence in silence. No interviews, no apologies. Some people never believe they've done anything wrong. But here's the question I want you to think about. How many warning signs were ignored? How many neighbors saw something and said nothing? How many times did Sarah reach out for help and find none. And how close did this family come to being destroyed forever? Simply because one person decided cruelty was acceptable and everyone else decided it wasn't their problem? Final thoughts. 55 to 0, 60 to 0. What do you think should have happened to Nicole? Do you think 4 years was enough, or should the consequences have been harsher? Have you ever witnessed someone hide their true intentions so well that by the time the truth came out, it was almost too late? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if you think this story was intense, wait until you hear about the case of the housekeeper who discovered a locked room in the basement and what she found inside changed everything. That's coming next. If you want to make sure you don't miss it, hit that subscribe button right now. Because some stories need to be told, and some truths need to be heard. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the people who suffer in silence are the ones who need your voice the most.